Hi, and welcome to our second webinar on value-based bidding, how to optimize to profit with SA360. I'm so excited to introduce you to our speakers today, John and Orlin, who are both GMP consultants in our US team, and I am Jade Orenstein, the VP of Tech and Data Solutions for Incubeta US. As far as our agenda goes today, we're going to be covering the why of value-based bidding, moving into the how, and we're really hoping that you're going to leave today excited and inspired on how to drive more profit for your business. We'll be closing off the session with two business cases, one for lead gen businesses and one for e-commerce businesses at the end, where we'll be going into some more detail in terms of the practicalities. And at the end, we'll also be closing off with a Q&A session. So please put all of your questions into the question box and we'll answer all of them at the end. So without further ado, I'll be now handing over to John to cover the why of value-based bidding.
Thank you, Jade. So to get started, we'll focus on a bit of just the higher level theory on why value-based bidding. It's a bit of a buzzword nowadays, especially in the digital marketing space, but we're going to really focus on what this means for your business and how it can really improve some of your marketing campaigns. So to get started, we found at Incubeta that many companies optimize their ad spend to total conversions or overall count of conversions, like leads, for example. But in reality, we know that not all conversions are created equal for your business. Each conversion may have different profit margins, different customer types, or plenty of other variables that actually impact the bottom line revenue or profitability. And we found that this approach may actually be costing your business greatly. We really want to focus on aligning your marketing campaigns with true business goals so that your marketing campaigns can drive greater investment and really work harder for the investment that you already have in. So we'll be focusing on those today. And there's really 4 points that we look at Incubeta on why value-based bidding. And these really do apply across industries to many different kinds of businesses. The first one is optimizing your media toward your true business objectives and KPIs. We often find that there's a bit of a disjointed KPIs or objectives between both your marketing objectives and your business objectives. We want to see if we can align those a bit better so that the campaigns are actually driving a bottom line impact for your business. The second would be to improve overall user quality and reduce wasted spend. The search auctions, as we know, are very crowded. So trying to inform the bidding algorithm as best we can to find the highest quality users is going to result in wasted spend and ultimately better performance. And that leads us into the third one, which is drive incremental performance and really more value from your existing campaigns. A lot of the marketing campaigns are quite dense. Many are actually just kind of not really adding too much value to your business. We want to hone in on those, on the more of the long tail campaigns, and ensure that each one has a purpose and it's actually driving valuable revenue to the business as a whole. And the fourth one is really more so focused on innovation. That's by using more machine learning and smart bidding. Google, Microsoft, and other search engines have been constantly innovating the way that they establish their tools for search campaign optimization, and we really want to lean into that. And one of the ways we can do that is through value-based bidding. We'll touch on a quick case study that we have at Incubeta. We have a large education brand that used predicted revenue to increase qualified applicants directly through SA360. So they have a standard online college flow where users will sign up online for an interest and then they'll run through the submission form before eventually obviously being approved and submitting their tuition for the upcoming semester, whether that's fall or spring. The challenge was the brand really only optimized on a CPA model that prioritized sheer lead volume, right? And as we know, not every lead, especially in this case, resulted in an actual sale or tuition for the business. So the bidder was optimizing toward pure lead volume, but not all of those users were making it to an actual enrollment in the upcoming semester. So the approach we designed was connect an offline predicted revenue into SA360 to feed in a predicted revenue value that acted as that value to use within value-based bidding. We developed a propensity model using lead data and a flurry of other signals from the user conversion flow that then informed the prediction on top of the lead. We then transitioned our CPA model toward the ROAS model after some testing and analysis toward this predicted revenue value. And then we created portfolios or bidding portfolios grouped by similar performance. So we shifted over from a pure maximum lead volume approach to more of a value-based bidding strategy with dynamic values coming in tied to the user ID. So each user that went through the lead journey had a predicted revenue or a score that was associated with them. And then we would activate that within bidding to eventually drive higher quality applicants and ultimately more tuition value for the business. It resulted in increased profitability and lead quality. And really what we saw after just a few months of testing was a 41% decrease in cost per application, a 14% lower cost per start. That's on the application start on site. And then a 6% increase in application rates, which is great to really fill a lot of those seats in the online university. And looking at next some external stats, this one from Google specifically, and I think it's a nice framework, is a lot of the spend is running through Google Ads. Value-based bidding helps drive customer value and significant return on ad spend. On average, advertisers or brands that switch from a target CPA to a target ROAS bid strategy usually see around a 14% uplift in conversion value. So that'll be the revenue that is tied to those conversions flowing through the platform. And this is across many different industries, aggregated from a Google internal study on 2021. And we use the stat internally as more of a benchmark to ensure that our tests that we're running on maybe a subset of campaigns are performing really against the industry benchmark. The next one here from Boston Consulting Group. This was back in 2021 to 2022, but they identified that the main accelerator to digital marketing maturity and growth and innovation in the space is sharing first-party data. And that's going to be a big theme that's woven throughout today on kind of how we activate this data, is taking the data that your brand, agency, or advertiser has, bringing that into the platform and enhancing the bidding signals that we have. Boston Consulting Group found that on average, companies that did this had an 18 percentage point increase in revenue, a 29 percentage point cost savings, and a 2x likelihood of market share growth. So it really is the accelerator in beating out your competitors and leaning into innovation a bit more, really harnessing the data that you are already collecting, bringing it back into the platform and enhancing the marketing campaigns. And we look at 4 stages of bidding sophistication, right? We have cost per click, maximizing the number of user clicks, that then kind of progresses into more of a target CPA or cost per conversion. Then we start looking at value-based bidding. And this is really where the industry is heading as a whole. It's revenue or profit per conversion, not just sheer conversion counts. That then leads us into more of a lifetime value or LTV per customer. We have a lot of experience calculating this and working this into our clients, but that's really bidding toward more of a forecasted customer lifetime, right? If you have repeat customers or users tend to come back and purchase more, we don't really want to be optimizing toward that first initial purchase. We want to be looking at that entire lifespan of the customer and feeding that data back into the platform. And really, as you move from left to right here, it really does drive more business impact. And lastly here, we have about 3 pillars that we'll be focusing on throughout the next couple of sections here that really get to the point of how we end up actually optimizing toward value within our marketing campaigns. One is sharing better data, such sharing the first-party data that's available and that's privacy safe into our ad platforms. The next would be assigning value to these different conversion actions. How much is each conversion action worth to my business? How many are there? Are we confident in these values, et cetera? Do we need to iterate? A bit of testing in there. And the third one would actually be focused around activation. So what does this look like in our bid strategies? How do we test? Are we confident with the results? Pairing that up with internal advertiser data to ensure that what we are activating and spending a lot of time on moving into the platform is actually beneficial to our business. So I'll hand it over to Orlin, my teammate, who will dive into these 3 specifically in the value-based bidding how section.
Thanks, John. So the first step in getting started with value-based bidding is sharing your data with SA360. The machine learning predictions that optimize your advertising are powered by the first-party data you share. So a solid conversion measurement is key to driving performance and optimizing your margins. So to get started, set up conversion tracking that aligns with your business objectives, and keep in mind these 3 points that we'll cover here. So first, you should share data about your entire business. So both online and offline. If your customer journey has multiple points that happen offline, make sure you share and import those. So for example, that could be if you have brick and mortar sales, or in the case of a lead gen example, it could be your lead nurturing pipeline that's happening offline. So make sure you cover the entire customer journey. Next, we recommend that you share all the important steps of the first 14 days of your customer journey. And this will help you with conversion volume and shorten that conversion cycle, helping you get started with value-based bidding quicker. The third point is your conversion data freshness. So make sure your the value-based bidding strategy works optimally. Ensure your offline conversions are uploaded and tracked on a daily basis. So next, let's have a look at some of the most common tools that you can use to collect and import that data. So starting with online conversions, there are different tagging solutions available, things like Google Tag Manager, or maybe using a global site tag. So choose the right fit for you and your business. I'm sure most of you are familiar and using some of these tools already. One key thing to note here in the context of value-based bidding is you can use custom parameters that capture additional information about your online conversions and pass those back to the platform. So this could be things like in a shopping and a retail example, your margins or shipping costs, or in a lead gen example, it could be the type of lead generated. So let's say you're in education and you want to set different values depending on the lead form fill. Let's say differentiating an MBA lead form submission versus a Bachelor of Finance, then you can set up a lead type custom variable, pass that back to the platform, and treat and assign a different value based on that. So next we have the offline conversion API. So if you have multiple steps in your sales journey that happen offline, you can import those in the platform using some type of match ID, so like a user ID or Google Click ID. So this is especially useful for businesses that have the majority of their sales funnel happen offline, going through some type of lead nurturing pipeline. So think automotive, real estate, or finance, or the education example I gave. So you can use Conversion API to upload those conversions back into the platform. And then the final example we have here is some of the native solutions that Google Ads offers. So these would be things like your store visits, your store sales direct, or the Salesforce native integration that Google Ads has. You can use those together with your floodlights and use for a value-based bidding case and strategy. So really the key takeaway here is, regardless of your tech stack or the type of CRM or user journey that you have, there's a variety of different tools and solutions that will work for you and help you collect and share that data back with Search Ads 360. So once you've made sure you have the correct tagging in place for your online conversions, and you found the best way to pass back your offline conversion data, make sure you have all the important steps of the sales journey imported back into Search Ads 360. So start by mapping out your entire sales journey to understand all the critical steps, and that'll help you pick the right conversion actions to use for value-based bidding based on your unique business models and your user journey, considering things like the different conversion volume you have for each step and the length of the conversion cycle. So generally, we recommend importing the entire conversion funnel, even though you won't be bidding towards all those micro conversions, but it'll give you stronger visibility and just enhance the reporting and give you all those extra insights. So those are some of the core points when it comes to the first step in getting started with value-based bidding, which was sharing your data with the platform. So let's move on to the next section where we'll talk about assigning the values. So before we go over the different type of values, let's discuss how do we define the value of a conversion. So the value assigned to your conversions should represent your best estimate of how much money the conversion has or will create for your business. So if you could, it could be immediate revenue or your profits or you forecasted customer lifetime value, for example. So choosing how to approach the value definition will depend on your business model and your unique customer journey. And it will also depend on your ability to capture and calculate the value at the time of conversion. So for example, if you're in online retail, you might be able to calculate the actual value generated by transaction, let's say profit, at the time of conversion or at the time of purchase. However, for other businesses that might have a longer customer journey and steps that happen offline, the value might not be immediately available. So in general, we have three main types of conversion values: static or proxy values. And secondly, we have dynamic values. And third, we have the predictive or advanced dynamic values. So let's take a closer look at each one, starting with static values. So static values or proxy values, if you don't have your revenue or profit data available, and you're not able to calculate that at the time of conversion, at the time of the conversion occurs, or not able to optimize towards the actual value, you can use static or proxy values. So this is a great way if you're just getting started and you don't know the exact value of your conversion actions. You can use a general or an average value as a proxy, and it will still help you differentiate your conversions and better align them to your business goals. So you can set static values directly in the Search SA360 conversion tab, or you can use something like value rules to assign and adjust the different values. So next we have the dynamic values or actual values. So when we say dynamic or actual values, we refer to values realized at the time of the conversion and that are conversion specific. So typically using your first party data, or let's say offline conversion import. So think revenue, lead scoring, or an example, if you're in online retail, would be passing back your profit margin data for each transaction at the time of purchase. So the final and kind of most advanced value type would be the predictive. And the predictive value, again, uses your dynamic and actual values, but it also tries to use predictive modeling to build a model and of the predicted customer lifetime value, or do things like lead scoring, or maybe use a propensity or churn predictive model. So it's focused on the long-term picture, looking past that first interaction, and looking at the customer as a whole and the lifetime value generated. So the last two types are typically preferred as you're providing the actual value generated to the business, and it's conversion specific, so it tends to be more accurate data than using a proxy. But the key takeaway here is to ensure the values you're assigning to your conversions accurately represent your business objectives. So start with the value type that's available to you, and then consider more advanced options as you get more comfortable with value-based bidding. So next, let's have a quick look at some features that you can use to adjust and assign the value and help you kind of fine-tune your value-based bidding and align it with your business objectives. So first, we have value rules. So it's a feature in Search SA360 or Google Ads that you can use to directly express or change the conversion values as they relate to your business by adjusting, based on three main dimensions. So that's geolocation, device, and audiences. So again, it's really easy to use to get started with, as it doesn't really require any sort of development, and you can use those three dimensions to adjust the value generated and assign to your conversions. So this could be things like, let's say you're running a promotion at a particular geolocation, and you know the conversion rates and your margins are likely to be higher. You can adjust the value accordingly in that location. And you can get creative and use that for your first party audiences and really tweak and tailor the value assigned. Next, we have the custom variable adjustments. So this, again, we use your floodlight tag parameters to just capture and bring in that additional first-party data that's, work in a similar way like the value rules, but really, go way beyond those 3 dimensions and really, use your first-party data, to pass that back and use it as a value adjustment in the platform. So think for anything like, passing back the margin, shipping costs, if you're, let's say in retail, or anything, to do with a different user type, different, lead type and so on. So really just a variety of different ways you can get creative and using that. And the last one is simply adjusting the values before you import them back to the platform. So now that we've covered the core principles behind sharing and assigning values, let's jump into the next section that covers more of the activation part. So first, let's have a quick recap on the difference between using value-based bidding versus standard conversion bidding. When we talk about value-based bidding, we refer to any bid strategy type that optimizes towards conversion value rather than just conversions. So if you're an online retail, you're likely already using conversion value-based bid strategy. But if you're a lead gen focused business, you're likely using conversion-based bidding. So something like maximize conversions or with or without a target CPA. So the key benefit here of switching to a value-based bid strategy approach is that you will stop treating your conversions equally and really focus on spending your budget on the conversions or customers that are worth the most to your business and are likely to have and drive the most impact to your business. So let's look at some auction examples of what that looks like in practice to better illustrate that point. So here we have a lead gen based example with 3 conversions. And in one case, we haven't assigned any values to them. In the other case, we've ranked them in accordance and accordingly and given them the appropriate value. So phone calls receiving the least, $5. Web registrations, $20 value worth of, and qualified lead, $150. So let's look at this example, auction number 1. Your value-based bidding is saying that is able to see that the predicted conversion out of that auction is actually your least valuable conversion. So the phone call being valued at $5, and that's gonna, it's gonna bid accordingly, and it's gonna make sure you're not overbidding for that. Whereas the conversion-only bid strategy, it would just bid sort of on par with what it would typically bid for all these other conversions. In the same example below, where you're entering an auction where the likelihood of generating a web registration is higher, but with a conversion-only bid strategy, you're not really able to differentiate. So you're in a sense underbidding for higher value outcomes and higher value customers, and you overbidding for sort of least valuable, less valuable conversion actions. So you really you want to start differentiating between these, because that reflects the way you're bidding in the auction, and therefore really maximizing the efficiency of how your budget is spent. And a quick example with multiple conversions being won in an auction. So if you see here in a one case example, we've got an auction that's likely to lead to a phone call and a web registration. So your target CPA bid strategy, we just treat those equally as 2. And then the second example where we still have 2 conversions, from a conversion only bid strategy perspective, your value-based bidding is able to see that auction is actually, likely to lead to your highest value lead here being your qualified lead. So it's really able to bid optimally and bid higher and really be aggressive winning that auction, knowing that it's going to drive the most impact and it's your most valuable conversion. So again, it's just a way to make sure you're not underbidding for your most important conversions and your most important potential clients, and you're not overbidding for really conversions that typically are of less value to you as a business. And let's quickly touch on setting a return on ad spend target. When you're using a value-based bidding strategy, you can use a target return to bid towards a specific return on investment goal. So setting the right target will depend on whether or not you're focused on growth or efficiency. So if you're very efficiency focused, you can use modeled results and interpret the optimal return on ad spend point. So if you're stricter with the return on ad spend target, and the goal is to yield the best return, that'll come at the expense of your total profit. So it will reduce both the investment and the revenue generated. On the other hand, if you're more growth focused, you can hone in on your incremental total profit that's available. So potentially at the incremental investment, while still ensuring it's yielding a net new profit. So the bottom line here is to tailor it to your business needs and goals. And if you're not sure about setting a specific target, you can start by using your past 30-day average return on ad spend as a target, or use the system recommended target. So now let's look at some activation examples and just kind of go through the different stages of what the different levels of a value-based bidding strategy would look like. So starting with the two most common senses being lead gen and retail. So let's look at the lead gen example. You're starting with your just lead gen, maximize conversions, or setting a target CPA target. So again, treating all leads equally, not really differentiating between the quality or likelihood or value likely to be generated by each lead. The step up from that will be maybe you use the leads you're tracking already and you start assigning proxy values to them. So that could be like, let's say you're tracking phone calls, live chats, and different form fills, set different values for them according to your kind of lead to sale conversion rates, give them proxy values, and start differentiating between them and kind of optimizing the spend accordingly. The next step up from that will be you import your sales funnel and you start optimizing towards the entire, sort of you bring in your lead nurturing pipeline and you start optimizing towards, the higher quality leads that will have the most value assigned to them. And the last one is using some type of, lead-based scoring method that you actually give each individual lead a value based on your kind of internal lead scoring and first party data. And a step up from that would be similar to the case John covered, where we actually tie that to predicted lifetime value of those leads generated. So start with the ones that you have the data readily available, and move up from there. And similar example here, let's have a look at online retail. So again, starting with just optimizing towards revenue and using something like a return on ad spend target. The step up from that will be, let's say you're an omni retail store and you have some brick and mortar stores. You can bring in that offline conversion data from your store sales, either via something like assigning averages to your store visits, or using like Google Ads as sales direct. So starting to mix the online and offline and optimizing towards something like omni ROAS. A step up from that would be making sure you're passing back all your margin data. And the next level up will be, again, using predictive, looking past that first purchase, looking at the customer as a whole and trying to forecast the likelihood of them, the value expected throughout their entire customer lifetime cycle. So that's these are some sort of simple, I guess, common examples for these two the most common business models that we would have. And it really just these are just rough suggestions of how it could work. You always need to tailor that to your sort of business needs and available data. Next, let's have a quick look at a testing framework. So we think a testing mindset is crucial to a successful rollout of a VBB strategy. So here we have a framework that covers some of the common best practices that we use. Let's just quickly go over some of them. So the first one is really make sure that there won't be any major changes happening just before or during a testing period. So no big budget adjustments, no account restructures or keyword overhauls. If maybe you have some, promotional upcoming product promotions, that's not going to be a good time to do a test then. So just really, make sure there's going to be no major fluctuations before or during the time. This is especially if you're going to test this and using some of the tools and experiments and Google Ads and set up like an A/B test. And another point here is just to note the test can take about 6 to 8 weeks. So make sure you plan in advance for that and make sure, like I said, nothing major is in the works during that time. So you're going to want to focus on, let's say, 3 to 5 campaigns that represent your account's general activity. So you can opt in for a mix of, different campaign types, generic, few branding campaigns, and so on. You need those campaigns to have a consistent budget, and ideally campaigns that are not budget constrained. So the campaigns you're testing, if they're budget constrained, then you won't be able to really see, which arm gets more conversion value if you're using an A/B test. So just make sure you're not capped on budget. Another thing you want to make sure is that your conversion delay is less than 14 days. So meaning the majority of your conversions have been recorded within 14 days. And the last few points here to keep in mind is the historical data. So historical data is going to be key to smooth bidding. So you need to have at least 30 days worth of conversion data in your account before you launch your value-based bidding strategy. You want to make sure your bid strategy has seen, I think if you're, at least 100 conversions for the suggested test of 3 to 5 campaigns over the last 30 days. And each campaign, I would say, at least needs a minimum of at least 15 conversions and ideally more. So if you're going to run an A/B test, then you need ideally 200 conversions. So each arm has 100, and aim to test the same conversion goals. So if your CPA arm of the test will test volume, then your return on ad spend arm will test the value of the same goal. And last point here, if you're changing conversion goals, give the system 30 days or 3 conversion cycles, whichever is the longest, to collect that data before you test or switch bid strategies. So all the other points that that relate to smart bidding still apply. We've got a couple of them here and some I just covered. So again, the final point and takeaway is, keep in mind your kind of smart bidding best practices that also apply to value-based bidding. So that wraps up our bid to value section here. And so I'll hand over to John, who'll take us through some business use cases.
Great, thanks, Orlin. So we can walk through now some actual application to real world business cases. And we'll go through 2, both a bit different in how we approach them and then how we activate them. So first we'll be focusing on VBB for e-commerce, right? This is what usually comes to mind when you think of e-commerce. It's value-based bidding, right? Getting TROAS strategies loaded up, optimizing toward that purchase or checkout value, rinse and repeat. But we're actually going to be taking this a step further. So we have a brand here called Outdoor Wear. They're in the consumer goods industry. They sell direct to customer via their website. That's their main channel for sales. The challenge is that they currently optimize toward a ROAS model on each user transaction. So return on ad spend against each user cart checkout on site. They feed that revenue back in via Floodlight into the Google marketing platform, and then they run a simple TROAS bid strategy on that. The problem there is that some of their highest selling product categories are actually their least profitable, right? So high revenue coming in from highly priced items, but the business itself doesn't actually make a large margin on those products. And that's a common challenge that happens in the retail and e-commerce industry, right? We want to actually look at the profitability of each product category to then tell the algorithm which one to prioritize to then make more money for our business down the line. So the solution design here would be, let's get profit data into SA360 to enhance the bidding algorithm and then subsequently drive more profit for hopefully the same investment, right? That's the goal. same investment, more profit for the business. A win-win all around. So there's a bit of input and work that's required here, right? We need profit margin. We need to understand what is the profit margin for each SKU that we sell on our website. That needs to be calculated, right? So to calculate that, we have the revenue for each, we have the sale price for each SKU. We need a cost of goods sold that is really mapped to each SKU online. And this cost of goods sold field can be really anything that you want, but it should encompass any of the main costs it takes to produce, store, ship, any overhead costs that are related to each product SKU, right? We can then calculate the margin off of that. That is traditionally housed in maybe a merchant center feed, or it could be brought in via an offline source, or even be coded into the website. That needs to be brought and joined together with the actual user transaction revenue. And all of that should then be mapped toward a user ID and then uploaded again against maybe a Google Click ID or a Microsoft Click ID. So all that calculation needs to happen somewhere. And we traditionally have used BigQuery to bring in different data sources. So we'll bring in the Floodlight revenue from the GMP, mapped to order ID and product SKU. We'll then bring in from the merchant center feed cost of goods sold, run a real-time calculation for profit margin in BigQuery, and then push that margin data back out as a revenue field to the GMP. We can then use that in our bid strategies in place of just the standard revenue that's coming from the cart. A couple considerations though. Holiday season is quickly approaching, right, during Q4. We want to be risk averse in this case. We don't want to be introducing too many factors. So picking a small subset of campaigns to test is definitely recommended, as Orlin mentioned. The test needs to run for, ideally at least 2 months to gather enough results and to really see if the approach is profitable for your business. Another consideration is many users purchase multiple items. So this adds complexity to the calculation of margin, right? If a user comes in and purchases 5 items, we need to pull cost of goods sold to calculate margin for all 5 of those within one cart, right? So that adds a bit of complexity. And looking at really the deployment of this, and this is similar to a lot of the advanced value-based bidding projects, is break it down into bite-sized projects, because you're going to need a lot of different teams to help collaborate on the delivery of this. IT, dev, data, even any paid media managers, right? So there's going to be a lot of hands in this. What we found is breaking this up into small parts and then assigning and kind of triaging accordingly. So the first step here would be stand up the data streams, get all of the relevant data streams. In this case, we really have about 2 or 3 coming into BigQuery, run the calculation, and then export that back out to the API into Campaign Manager to a Floodlight. From our experience, that takes anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks, depending on data quality and other factors. We then want to analyze the profit margin data within the platform to really, and then compare that to the internal data to see, is this working? Is it accurate? Are the marketing campaigns reacting well to the data that's coming in? We then want to prepare a campaign testing subset and launch plan. Again, only testing on a small number of campaigns, iterating and kind of taking your time to analyze the results, and then ultimately expanding if it works. And if it doesn't work, roll it back, and at least we still have profit margin data coming into the platform. We can then analyze and use for just reporting or maybe general optimization. So again, it's really breaking it down into pieces, and we've seen that work pretty well. Recommended platforms here that for this specific use case on an e-commerce brand would be SA360, Campaign Manager 360, Google Merchant Center or Microsoft Merchant Center, and then BigQuery to run the calculations. But again, there's different platforms that can deliver the same result here. The next example we'll go into is for value-based bidding for lead gen. So you traditionally don't think of value-based bidding being applicable for lead gen clients, right? Because the sales cycle is often long, revenue isn't really realized until weeks or months later, even years later in some cases, where it's very difficult to optimize toward a revenue value for a lead gen client. And then we'll show you an example here of an education brand that it definitely works for the industry, or at least gets you one step in the right direction. So here we have Monroe University. They're an online higher education university, and their marketing goal is to drive efficient student enrollment. They want all of their classrooms packed, full tuition being realized at the start of each semester. And to do that, they need to drive leads, right? And we know for, across the education industry that This is often a very lengthy process. It's a big decision because it's very expensive and it takes years to often complete certain degrees. So getting ahead of this journey and understanding the full user flow is very important on actually activating value-based bidding. Again, to the initial point, all the way in the back of this webinar was not every lead is created equal. And this is especially true for the education space, right? Thousands of people may apply, but only a very small subset, a very small percentage of those users are actually approved to then submit an application and then obviously enroll. So finding those right customers and targeting them is going to lead to less wasted spend. So that's what we want to look at here. The challenge is the current strategy focuses on lead volume. There's a lot of poor quality applicants that come in, and we're essentially wasting our marketing dollars on these users where they aren't going to get approved. So we're looking at high cost per enrollments that's really taking a toll on our marketing department. The solution would be integrating your sales funnel, because there's a very long sales funnel here with all of the different micro conversions and steps it takes to actually enroll. Having a deep understanding of that, and then plugging that in somehow to the platform to give us a conversion and a value that is a bit deeper than just the online lead submission or the online interest form, right? We want to go a bit deeper than that. So really understanding the full journey of the customer is extremely important, especially in the lead gen space for value-based bidding. And essentially we want to ensure that the campaign's optimized toward high quality leads, and then we drive the most profitable student enrollments. We want to fill up the certain education courses that drive the most profit for the business, right? Input required here would be a CRM integration. This is likely going to be an offline CRM. There are many native integrations, but there's also ways to connect APIs to feed in really any customer data, as long as there are match keys and similar IDs present throughout the journey. In this case, we could use a user ID or a lead ID that is consistent with the applicant all the way through the journey, right? So if all the way through lead submission, they submit a form online, they get a lead ID or a user ID. If they eventually become a student, that lead ID or user ID still has to be stitched to them. And that's how we can actually feed some of these conversions or revenue back in. And we'll want to eventually marry that to the Google Click ID, for correct attribution in the ad platform. A couple considerations here: seasonality, right? Semester enrollment times. I think probably planning some sort of integration and testing plan on the at the tail end of a semester, or even during a semester when we're not kind of looking toward the next one, would probably be beneficial. There's a very long conversion window, right? How far can we go? What can we upload? What conversion is within maybe 14 days that we can actually upload back in and then accurately attribute that to the GCLID, right? Is that one step beyond? Is it a qualified lead? Is it a phone call with an admissions director, et cetera? How far can we take that we can still use it and have a quality that we can optimize our campaigns toward that? We don't want it to be too far out. We don't want anything. We don't want 3 months, 6 months between these conversions. We want something a bit closer. And then obviously enrollment volume consideration, right? We want to have adequate volume on the enrollments and the leads to actually yield positive results and feel good about the test that we're implementing. So the deployment of this is very similar, right? Focus on bite-sized projects. The first one being in the first 1 to 4 weeks, see what information is captured in the CRM. Usually for education clients, it's more of a qualified lead or an approval. If someone applies online, they're then approved either right away or in a few days or a few weeks, or they're qualified to say, yes, this is a student that we could see at our university. Let's give them the thumbs up, essentially, right? And at that point, that's not value-based bidding. That's just another conversion down the journey. We need to then assign some sort of revenue to that, right? Based on the information that user filled in the lead form or the request information form, were there any signals that we could then apply to a value calculation? What is their previous level of education? What kind of courses are they interested in? What kind of departments are they looking for, right? Any of those can then be applied with maybe like an internal multiplier to say, this person is of very high value versus this one who may be of less value in the end, right? So we can kind of start to think about that calculation, and a lot of businesses already have this data. It's not really being shared with marketing platforms though. So developing some sort of predictive model is very helpful for kind of getting this value tied to these leads back in. We then bring it into the platform, analyze the data, compare it to the internal data, make some sense of it for 1 to 2 weeks, then prepare a subset testing plan for a small group of campaigns. Again, outside of seasonality or peak, because we have seen that when you do start testing brand new bid strategies, and this goes for conversion-based bidding or value bidding across large areas of the account, you can see volatility in performance. So you do want to be cautious about that, and then obviously analyze and expand if necessary. But this just goes to show that it can be done outside of a traditional e-commerce industry. And that about does it for our business use cases. I will pass it over to Jade, and I think we have a few questions to round us out.
Cool. Thanks so much, JT and Orlin, for that super useful information. And I really hope everyone learned something from today. If you do have any questions that you haven't submitted into the question box, please feel free to email us. Our email address will be on our last slide at the end. But thank you to everyone who did submit a question today. I'm going to kick off in the order that they came in. Sorry about that. So the first one is, I want to test value-based bidding, but my peak sales period is approaching. What are your recommendations for testing?
Yeah, I can touch on that. I think we just mentioned it briefly, but if peak period is approaching and there are any data quality issues, or we're a bit unsure, or maybe midway through the project internally, I would wait. I would wait until after. We want to get the data in and qualified first and make some sense of it before we actually activate anything. And that includes even a test. So I would definitely be risk adverse. Again, performance can be volatile when switching to any bid strategy or new conversion source. So I would just take some care in that and probably look to test in maybe like a non-peak season, or definitely outside of Q4 if you're an e-commerce retailer.
Cool, thank you. The next one that we got is, can I test value-based bidding if I'm using a budget bid strategy?
I can take that one. So I think you can use value-based bidding with a budget bid strategy. You can optimize towards revenue. I think the one caveat is that the budget bid strategy will still look at, maximizing your spend, or making sure you spend your budgets as a kind of first most important point, and then only second look at that efficiency and driving revenue. So it's kind of a different approach. It's not focused towards optimizing margins and performance and revenue. It's kind of looking at spending your budget first. So that's one caveat. So I wouldn't recommend that as a test, but it could in theory work with both. So if you're just starting out and you want to test it out, we'd recommend you set it up separately as a standard bid strategy.
Perfect, thank you. The next one is a pretty good one, and it's probably something that a lot of people are thinking, is what if I don't know the value of a lead to my business?
Yeah, that's a good one, and we see that a lot. It's especially when certain departments aren't incentivized on necessarily driving revenue, but more so lead volume, right? So how do we bring that into marketing to then enhance campaigns? I think the first step is understanding the full journey of the user. Like, what are the different micro conversions from lead to sale? There's likely a lot in there, including phone calls or other online actions or offline actions. It's understanding the flow of that, and then understanding the conversion rates of each. So what is the rate of conversion from someone moving to a lead to maybe a qualified phone call? If we know all of those conversion rates, and we have a CPA in mind of what we're looking for on the lead, you can actually back into the value of the eventual sale or lead, right? You come up with a corresponding conversion value for that lead. And that's something we can definitely help you with. There's a lot of resources outlined that help on more of the calculator side, to try to input some of your business data. But yeah, I would say if you're struggling for that and you really want to look at value-based bidding, reach out and we can definitely help you with that.
Perfect, thank you. And then the next one is, are there any verticals or businesses that value-based bidding actually doesn't work for? Which is also a really good question. I think it's something that we've definitely covered, looks at lead gen, and we looked at retail, but is any vertical that we would say that it does not work for?
I think value-based bidding works for most businesses and user journeys. I think maybe if you were, let's say, in a B2B, highly niche, super long sales cycle and very low volume, the type of vertical, that situation might be, harder to come up with a value-based bidding case. But I think in general, I'd say it works for 99% of, typically the businesses that we typically work with. I don't know, JT, if you've got something to add.
Yeah, I think it's the thing of, you don't want to force anything, right? If the conversion delay is too long and these offline conversions happen too far apart, and we don't have the capabilities to establish some sort of prediction or lead scoring method, then I wouldn't force it. But I would push back and argue and say that there are capabilities to kind of enhance the data flow and the marketing intelligence to then predict. Because at that point, if the conversion delay is so long and there's so much time that happens between the actual sale, there should be some sort of prediction built in to gauge the level of how valuable that lead is sitting around for your business. So you can actually use that value to then pump in. But I would say it definitely works for every business, but I think some it's definitely more difficult.
Yeah.
Perfect. So if you are one of those businesses that you don't know how to apply it, or you think it might not work, again, just reach out to us and we can go through your use case and see if we can find a solution that will work for you, because it sounds like 99% of cases covers most of us. So yeah, please reach out if you do have one that you'd like us to edge test for you. And then last question for today is, this business's marketing department is incentivized to drive leads instead of revenue. And they don't think that they're ready to switch to value-based bidding. What would we recommend in this case?
I think we kind of touched on this again, but I would say it's definitely getting a handle on the quality of data, and more so, I think you have to lead with education in that sense, right? Like, are your marketing campaigns currently maximizing your lead volume? Like, are you happy with that? Do we feel like our dollars are being stretched as far as they can? It's also looking at competition a bit too, right? Like, if you're in a very competitor dense market and you're not looking at VBB, it's likely that a lot of your competitors are, and they're actually winning those auctions where the users submitting a lead are actually being scored a bit higher on whatever system they're using, whatever predictive system they're using. Their bidding algorithm is working a bit harder and has a bit more intelligence. So I think about it like that. I would say I would start with a lot of education internally on like the topics and more of the theory of value-based bidding. But because we definitely need buy-in and work from a lot of different teams to get this done. So I would start there.
Perfect. I actually just saw that 2 more questions have just come in. So there's one more around what happens in the situation where integrating a CRM isn't possible and you're wanting to do value-based bidding for a lead gen or an education type company?
So I think in that case, you can just assign proxy or static values to the conversions that you already have and layer it out with things like value rules, or maybe use some custom parameters to pass back some more first-party data to differentiate the different lead types or different conversion actions. So let's say you have phone calls, different lead form fills, and let's say a live chat. You can still, just with those that set of online conversion tracking, conversion goals, you can still kind of assign values to those and use those without dipping into the offline part, and that'll still get you started with value-based bidding and help you drive efficiency that way.
Okay, perfect. And then there's one question that came through in the chat. So from a B2B perspective, do we have any case studies for industries in commodity trading, e.g. coal, commodity trading, for example, coal? I can't think of any off the top of my head, but does anyone want to input on how that looks from in a B2B space?
Yeah, I think it's we have a lot on B2B, not commodity trading specifically, but I think you would again follow a similar process. We'd want to understand the full sales funnel and the conversion flow. I would assume that there's many micro conversions that happen in there, phone calls, whatever they may be. I mean, is it integrating some sort of call tracking and getting, first of all, it's securing all of the different conversions and tagging them up correctly from the initial discovery meeting, whatever it may be, pre-sales meeting to the actual sale, to the other company. I would secure all of the micro conversion tagging, have that data ready and start ingesting some of it, and then look to assign values, right? I mean, if we're already there with maybe a conversion bidding system, then again, layering in some sort of prediction, or again, we could use static values, right? So it's not necessarily feeding in a dynamic value every time, especially if the sales cycle is quite long. It's are there any qualities of that end customer that then we can bring in and kind of use as a scoring system, right? So can we rank certain attributes of that end business buyer to then tell us that, hey, this is probably a more qualified person. Let's just use static values and look toward TROAS that way.
Cool. Olin, do you have anything to add on that point? Or?
No, I think that's spot on. It's really just looking at any other touch points or indicators to use, and not necessarily that final, just anything you have in that you can use in that sales funnel and bid towards.
Perfect. And Teddy, if you want to explore that further, really feel free to reach out to us, and we can definitely have a conversation and see how we can assist there. So thank you, guys. I think that is all our questions. I haven't seen anything more come through, but really appreciate everyone who submitted a question and also everyone that joined. We're very, very excited to have this opportunity to speak to you about this topic. In terms of our next webinars, the next one will be at the end of next month, so the end of October, on SA360 templates. We're hoping for an exciting guest speaker who will be joining us. And then the last one will be on the Performance Center in SA360, which will be at the end of November. So please do join us. You'll see our emails go out soon about these webinars, and we'll make sure that you're all very much included in the email so that you're aware when they're happening. If you do have any questions, please reach out to us at gmp.usa@incubeta.com. Email will go to all of us. So if you have any general questions on the content, if you think you have an opportunity that you want to explore around value-based bidding or anything around the GMP stack, please reach out. And again, thank you for joining us for the last near hour. We really are happy to have had you, and we're looking forward to hosting the next one. So have a great day.